In the last class, we have discussed about the various methods. And in the last class only, I told you about the basis of classification and different types of costs. Okay, classification is the process of grouping costs according to their common characteristics. There are various methods of classifying costs. The important basis of classification are: first one, by nature or element; second one, by function; third one is as direct and indirect; and fourth one, by variability; fifth one is by controllability; sixth one is as per capital and revenue; and seventh one is by normality; eighth one is by time; and ninth one is for making managerial decisions. These are the basis of costing, and according to the basis, we are having different types of costs, basing upon the nature or element. Okay, basing upon the nature or element. According to this basis, costs are classified into three categories. First one is materials, second one is labor, and third one is expenses. These are the three things that we come across, and we will call them as elements of cost. Now, this classification is important as it serves to find out the various elements of cost of a product and the relative importance of each element in the total cost of a product. Okay, when we go one by one, when we go one by one, okay, if you want to know the total cost of a product, we have to take into account the elements. And I told you already the elements are materials, labor, and expenses. Okay, so you cannot calculate or you cannot come to total cost without materials. In the same way, you cannot get the cost without taking labor. Labor means wages. And when you take into account only material and wages, that thing also it won't give a full-fledged picture regarding the cost of a product. You have to take into account the expenses. And these elements, whatever it may be, we are going to learn in the next coming classes. But by nature or element, we are having three elements. Okay, and this thing you must take into account. That is, what is the material cost? What is the labor cost? What are the expenses that we come across? All these things are very, very important when we go for a cost. Okay, next, by function. Okay, after taking into account the nature or elements, we have to take into account the functions of the organization. How many functions they will take into account. When we go for the functions, we are having three types of functions: production, administration, selling, and distribution. These are the three functions that we come across when we want to know about the cost. That is, you have to know the production cost, you have to know the administration cost, and you have to know the selling and distribution cost. Okay, without these functions, you cannot derive complete picture of a cost of a product. Here, costs are classified according to functions to which they relate. There are three major function costs: production, administration, and selling and distribution. These are the three things that we come across. Next, third category. Third, as direct and indirect. As direct and indirect. When we go for expenses, when we go for costs, we'll come across two types of costs: direct costs and indirect costs. These are the two types that we come across. What are direct costs and what are indirect costs? Direct costs are those costs which are completely related to the production aspect. And after direct costs, we'll come across indirect costs. Indirect costs, they will assist in the manufacturing of a product. So direct costs as well as indirect costs. These two things, they are very, very important when we want to know the cost of a product, cost to manufacture a product. If you want to know, these two things are very, very important. Now, direct means that which can be conveniently identified with and allocated to a particular unit of cost. You can identify that. You can identify the main cost, direct cost. Okay, so that is more important. Identification is nothing but the direct important cost that we come across. Okay, when we take into account, I mean, in this context, I'm going to give an example. Suppose when you want to I mean, produce a table, the direct material is wood. The direct labor is the person who is, that is the carpenter, the direct person who is converting and cutting that into shapes and making that. And direct expenses. Okay, direct expenses. Okay, when you purchase wood and when you appoint a carpenter, the product will not be produced. You have to take into account the nails. For purchase of nails, you have to spend money. So that thing is also an important thing that we come across. Okay, purchase of nails, I mean polish, all these things they'll come across. And what about indirect costs? Okay, after completing the table, you have to write. You have to go for softening for that, and you have to cover the wherever you come across the nails. You have to cover with mica, and you have to take a red oxide paint, and after that, whatever it may be, the color that you want. Okay, so indirect expenses also they will also participate in the production of a commodity. So direct costs are those costs which we can identify, whereas indirect costs are nothing but the costs which we come across, but we cannot identify them. Okay, the best example for direct direct costs is the cost of cloth in the ready-made shirt, wages payable to a worker. These things, they are the examples for direct cost. Indirect cost, that means that which is of general character and that cannot be identified with a particular unit of cost. Okay, you cannot identify that. When you want to know the cost of a product, you cannot identify, but the importance will be there. When you go for this, what are the examples? The cost of consumable stores, salary of a foreman or supervisor, rent of the factory, etc. All these things, they are nothing but the indirect expenses. Okay, so suppose if you take into account when you are manufacturing a table or tables, you won't manufacture only one table, mind it. You have to produce some number of units, and all these things you won't do that in the open air. You must do that in a factory. Okay, so when you are doing, automatically you have to pay rent to the factory. When you are doing on the roadside, on the road or roadside, okay, no one will have that. There is no necessity for you to take into account the indirect taxes. But thing is, when you are manufacturing some commodities, okay, you must have a factory where these commodities are manufactured. So not only direct costs but also indirect costs also play an important role. The thing is, direct costs you can identify, whereas indirect costs you cannot identify. That is the main difference that we come across between direct cost and indirect cost. Next, variability. Variability. Variability of cost is reckoned in relation to the volume of production. Okay, reckoned in record in relation to the volume of production. How many units you are manufacturing? How many commodities you are manufacturing? Basing on that, this variability cost will depend. Okay, costs vary in sympathy with production, while some remain constant. On this basis, costs are classified into three types: fixed costs, variable costs, and semi variable costs. Okay, basing on variability, you will come across three types of cost: fixed cost, variable cost, and semi variable cost. What is fixed cost? Irrespective of the production, whatever it may be, the cost that you have to pay compulsory. Okay, what you have to pay compulsory, they are nothing but the fixed cost. That's why he are given you some costs are constant. Okay, some costs are constant, so that is compulsory. You have to bear that, and you have to come across like that. Okay, when you take into account the present era, the present situation, taking into account the corona, the prices of the commodities, all they are increasing. Why? What is the reason? The reason is people who are selling the commodities, they will concentrate on recovery of fixed cost. They will come across fixed costs. Not I mean, don't be of that opinion that they won't come across. They will come across fixed costs, variable costs. Forget about the commodities produced, but first of all, they will concentrate whether I can able to recover the fixed cost or not. When they are ready to sell, first of all, their mind will go for recovery of fixed cost. If I recover the fixed cost, then whatever it may be, okay, the profit I'll get, I'll take that. So for that, for recovery of the fixed cost, they are increasing the prices. And people, what they are doing is, when the prices are high, people they are not going. See the peculiarity. According to the point of seller, he want to recover the fixed cost. For that, what he is doing is he is increasing the prices. But from the point of consumers, when the prices are high, people they won't go for that. Okay, it is immaterial for the consumers. Okay, whether he is going to recover the fixed cost or not, it is immaterial. See, the prices are high, so there is no necessity for us to go and think about that product. For example, the prices of tomatoes, they are increasing. Previously, people they used to get at 20 rupees, but now the prices increased to 60 rupees and 50 rupees and 60 rupees. So there they are not going for this fixed cost, recovery of fixed cost. But after some time, after some time, they decided whether we can be in a position to recover our fixed cost or not. So that's why the prices of some commodities they increased a lot. And that situation is when there is lockdown, and when the government when it is stated, when the government when it stated that the prices should not go high, the prices should not rise, and all the people who are selling the commodities are also in this same position, that is lockout position. And once if the lockout was taken away, then people started, array, we have to go for the fixed cost and we have to recover the fixed cost. By hook or crook, we have to recover the fixed cost because all the commodities they are with us. We cannot able to move the commodities. No one is purchasing. What we have to do? So that's why they increased the prices, thinking that they can able to recover the fixed cost. So that is important. That's why when we are going for variability, he told that some costs remain constant, while other costs they will change according to the production of the commodities, according to the production of the products, they will change. If you increase the production, automatically some costs they will change. If you decrease the production, automatically some cost, the cost of some things or the cost, okay, some type of cost, they will come down. Okay, so like this, you'll have variability, variation, difference. Okay, on this basis, costs are classified into three groups, namely fixed cost, variable cost, and semi-variable cost. Fixed cost, it is that cost which in aggregate tends to be unaffected by variations in volume of output. Okay, okay, whether the volume of output, whether it is increasing or decreasing, it won't take into account that thing. It will take into account this thing must be paid. This thing must be okay. I mean, we have to recover this thing. Like that, people they will think. So that is nothing but fixed cost. And what are the examples of fixed cost? Rent of an office. Rent of an office. Similarly, factory manager's salary. Whether there is production or nil production, you have to pay salary to the office, I mean, factory manager. That is compulsory. Whether you produce the commodity or not, you have to repay the rent of a factory. So all these things are nothing but the examples for fixed cost. Next, variable cost. This is a cost which in aggregate tends to vary directly with variations in volume of output. I told you that. All costs which change basing upon the number of units produced, it is nothing but variable costs. And what are the examples of this variable cost? All the direct elements of cost are variable costs. All the direct elements of cost are variable costs. That is, materials, labor, and expenses. Whenever they change, automatically variable costs also they will change. When they are high, variable cost will be high. When they are low, variable cost also will be low. Like this you will come across. Now, the third category of costs are semi-variable costs. Semi-variable costs. So this is the cost which is partly fixed and partly variable. Okay, up to certain extent, up to certain level, the costs remain constant, they won't change, and from that position onwards the cost will change. So that type of cost we'll call them as semi variable costs. And mind it, semi variable costs you won't come across every time. Okay, what is the example of that? Maintenance of a building or plant, they are semi variable. Okay, semi variable in the sense, okay, part of the costs are fixed, they won't change up to certain level, and after that level they will increase. After that level they will increase. Okay, so maintenance of a building and plant are semi variable. In this context I'm going to tell you one thing. Semi variable costs you won't come across when we go for cost accounting. So what you mean by this? Okay, as I told you that some portion of costs are fixed and some portion of costs are variable. The fixed portion of the cost, they'll go and they will add to the fixed cost. That is, they will join the fixed cost. Whatever it may be, the variable portion, it will go and it will mingle with the variable cost. So don't be of that opinion that semi variable costs will come always. For our understanding, we have to take into account this, okay, category, that is semi variable costs. Like this you will come across remaining things tomorrow we are going to study. Thank you.